I feel like everyone's made cookies before, and honestly, they're probably great. But there are a few things you should think about doing just to take them to the next level, and you'll have bakery level cookies in no time. And the very first thing you can do is make some better butter. Instead of just regular old butter, you can take the time to brown it first to get some really nutty caramelized flavors out of it. Grab 225 grams or 2 sticks of cubed butter and start melting it in a pan over medium heat. Swirl it around to make sure everything melts, and then keep going, letting it carry on heating up as you stir it until it just starts turning light brown. Don't let it go further than that or it'll start to taste burnt. Transfer your brown butter to a bowl and leave it in the fridge for about 1 hour, maybe an hour and a half, until it starts to set up and get the consistency of softened butter. With a spatula or a wooden spoon, start beating it to make sure it's not too solid in some places, and try and get it almost fluffy and light. Then we can move on to the next thing that will improve your cookies, and that's sugar. Use a mix of white sugar and soft brown sugar. In this recipe we're using 50 grams or 1/4 cup of white sugar and 150 grams or 2/3 cup of brown sugar. You can change the ratio to fit your taste. The more brown sugar you use, the chewier your cookies will be. Now you need to cream your sugar and butter together, and by that I mean beat it together like you're trying to turn it into whipped cream. This takes longer than you'd think. Keep going until you think you've done enough, then beat it for another 5 minutes just to be sure. The goal is to have really creamy, smooth butter with no sugar granules left that you can feel. Next, you can crack in 2 eggs, one at a time, making sure the first one is properly incorporated before beating in the second one. Your mixture will look kind of sloppy and lumpy at first, just keep mixing, and it'll eventually come together. Mix slowly at first so it doesn't fly out of your bowl. You don't have to be as vigorous during this step as the creaming part. Think of this as a cool down period from the workout you just had for your arms. Okay, let's talk chocolate. If you're making chocolate chip cookies, please don't bother with the actual chocolate chips. Get yourself a nice bar of good quality dark chocolate and chop it into small chunks by chopping it into strips one direction, then into little cubes and shards by cutting across your strips. The reason we're doing it like this is to get a bunch of different sized chocolate chunks, some that will fully melt into the cookie, some that stay whole, and some in between that will be oozy and melty when you break open your cookies. Incorporate your chocolate into your cookie dough. If you want to add anything else as well as, or instead of, the chocolate, you can do it at this stage as well. It will look like a lot of chocolate at first, but once it's mixed in, it'll be fine. Now for our dry ingredients. Just pour in 325 grams or 2 2/3 cup of plain flour, followed by a pinch of salt, half a teaspoon of baking soda, and half a teaspoon of what seems to go into all my recipes on this channel, cinnamon. Fold those ingredients into your egg and butter mixture just until you can't see any streaks of flour anymore, then immediately stop. The mistake most people make is mixing too much once the flour is added and not enough during the creaming of the butter and sugar stage. We want as little gluten development as possible. Once you're done mixing, the dough needs to rest in the fridge to firm up and develop flavour. Ideally, you should leave your bowl in the fridge overnight, but if you can't wait that long, leaving it in there for at least 1 hour should have a bit of an effect. The point of this is so that when we bake our cookies, the butter doesn't immediately melt so your cookies won't spread out as much. This next tip hasn't got much to do with cookie making specifically, but just clean up and do dishes as you go when you're doing anything in your kitchen. Your future self and or the people that you live with will thank you. When your dough has had its time in the fridge, lift it out and start preheating your oven to 180 degrees Celsius or 350 Fahrenheit. Grab golf ball sized pieces of your cookie dough, or ping pong ball sized if you feel like there's any kind of difference. Roll them roughly into spheres and place them on a Silpat or baking paper lined baking tray. You want to space them out a bit because they will spread out when they bake.
This recipe makes 12 cookies that I wouldn't try to fit more than 6 on one baking tray. Either use two trays or bake them in 2 rolls. You can even wait 150 grams.
This recipe makes 12 cookies, but I wouldn't try to fit more than 6 on one baking tray. Either use 2 trays or bake them in 2 goes. You can even wait another day or 2 before baking your next batch. Now, for our final tip that will improve mostly the look of your cookies. Take your dough balls and break them open, reshaping them slightly to keep them roundish. By doing this, you're making a bunch of cracks and crevices on top of your cookies, so they won't come out of the oven looking so smooth like homemade cookies do. These will look more like the kind of cookies you'd get at a bakery. Into the oven they go for 18 minutes, which will get them to be crisp and crumbly on the outside, but still soft and chewy in the center. Lift them out once they're done and let them cool on the baking tray until you can easily lift them off without them sticking or breaking, and then either set them on a wire rack to cool completely, or you could, you know. So there you have it. The next time you make cookies, try to apply at least a couple of these tips and I guarantee you'll be pleased with what you've made. Either way, if you enjoyed the video and you want to help me out, leave a like and subscribe to my channel and I'll see you next time.